Oh, hey, Timothy Ratajczak here. On behalf of The Chosen and Against the Tide Media, I want to welcome you to an interview with actor, producer, writer, minister, rabbi, Steve Shermett,
Father and Jack of all trades.
who plays one of the Pharisees, a disciple of Nicodemus, in this first ever multi-season series about the life of Jesus. Steve, welcome.
Man, what a blast to do this. Thank you so much for interviewing me, Tim.
No, we're going to argue over who's going to have more fun, and I think it's going to be, but it's okay. So, just to get started here, it occurs to me that you started out as an actor a few years back. We won't say how many, but you stepped away from that profession for a while, and your life took a decidedly different direction. Can you tell us about your ambitions as a young actor and why you stepped away from acting and why you're now back in it?
Yeah, for sure. I fell in love with acting in middle school, actually. The high school had a musical presentation at our school, and I was just mesmerized. It was probably the first musical presentation that I'd ever seen. And there was the singing and the dancing, and I just thought, I'm going to do this. So when I got into high school, sure enough, I joined the drama club, became the president of the drama club, started auditioning and getting roles in community theater, and worked my way up to the San Bernardino Civic Light Opera, got a role in that. And I just loved what I was doing. I was taking singing lessons, dancing lessons, piano lessons. I wanted to do the real thing. That was my career ambition. But it's hard to make a living doing that. And then when I found the Messiah and I became a believer, my world changed. And I wasn't sure how to integrate my faith with the theater life. So while I was wrestling with that, I ended up choosing a career path as a law enforcement officer. And I never became one, but I did put myself through the police academy. I graduated towards the top of my class and started applying for different jobs. And God kept shutting doors, shutting doors, shutting doors. See, this was also right around the same time I became a believer. So my world was just, it was crazy. It was turned upside down. I didn't know what I was going to be. I was a young adult, so I was stepping into living on my own. I was in the theater. I was out of the theater. I'm trying law enforcement. What am I going to do with myself? God did, however, open up doors for ministry. And so I started to minister. I ended up going to Bible college, Moody Bible Institute, got a degree in Jewish studies there back in the 80s. Met my beautiful wife there. We got married. We moved to Tucson, Arizona, where I started a Messianic synagogue called Congregation Beth Sar Shalom. After doing that for about 15 years, and in between that, raising 4 children, we ended up starting Book of Life Community Church. So I led Book of Life and Beth Sar Shalom simultaneously. I had services on Saturday, services on Sunday, the 2 boards. Did a lot of other things while that was going on, went back to school, started the Association of Messianic Congregations, started a congregation in Mexico, helped start a congregation in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I got tired.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. And so I ended up on sabbatical. And while I was on sabbatical, I was looking for fun things to do. It was my birthday, and I saw this meetup on-screen acting class up in Phoenix. I live in Tucson. It's about 2 hours away. So it's my birthday. I wanted to do something special. I said, I used to really love acting. I wonder if I'd still like it. Wonder if I still got it. And I've never done it on camera, really. It's always been on stage. What the heck? Why don't I drive up to Phoenix? I got nothing else to do. So I signed up, I paid my fee, I hopped in the car, I drove up to Phoenix, and Tim, I got on that camera, I studied my scene, and it was magic. I loved it. The people watching it were mesmerized. The guy leading the class said, you could do this. You're very good. Have you considered doing this? And I'm like, I've got 2 congregations. I got 4 kids. I can't do this. He said, well, film acting is not like stage acting. You don't have to go to rehearsals every day after work for a month. You can do a film on a weekend. Really? On a weekend? I could do that. And that's back into acting.
Well, at this stage, I would be tempted to ask, what kind of a job is that for a Jewish boy? Because that's what my mother would be saying. But it's okay. One thing led to another. God put you exactly where he wanted you to be. So that is a good thing. Now, you talked about the Book of Life Community Church and the Beth Sar Shalom congregation, and simultaneously you were heading both, and that must have been like walking a tightrope. In one congregation, you were probably not Jewish enough, and in the other congregation, you were probably too Jewish. So how did you balance this? And were there any complications? I guess there must be a million humorous stories here.
Oh man. We had a very unique thing. Generally speaking, you're in the Messianic world, you're often exclusive. And if you're in the non-Messianic world, you might be open and curious, but definitely exclusive. But in my frame of reference, we're all believers. And just because I express myself from a Jewish frame of reference, that doesn't mean people who don't have a Jewish frame of reference, that their form of worship isn't valid. And so I could express my form of worship on Saturday and at home, and then I could reach more people with the Word of God on Sunday using their form of worship. But I found it fascinating that these Sunday people, and I led Book of Life Community Church, but prior to that, I pastored a large Baptist church, and then after that, a non-denominational church, and then the Book of Life. And that each of these congregations, and then all the places I was a guest speaker, they loved hearing about Jewish things. They loved experimenting and experiencing Jewish customs. And it was a very positive experience. There were tight ropes, because within a Messianic congregation, you've got some people who want to go this way and some people who want to go that way. And but early on, I said, no, this is the way it's going to be. And you could join us, and we'll accept you the way you are, even if you feel differently, as long as you accept us the way we are. Our primary call was unity. That ancient Christian saying, in the essentials, in all things unity, but in the essentials unity. The saying, I had it memorized, and now that I'm on camera, it jumped out of my brain.
No, I know exactly what you're trying to express. And I feel the same way. I feel like Christians have no understanding of the Jewish roots of their religion, and it strikes me as very strange that they could embrace a religion that they don't understand where it came from. A woman commented the other day, she said, Judaism was Jesus's original religion. Well, wait a second. As far as I know, it was his only religion. So, again, it's things like that people misunderstand.
Oh, hey, let me jump in, because while you were talking, I pulled out my phone and I found that quote.
Okay.
In the essentials unity, in the non-essentials liberty, in all things charity.
Yes.
And that's how I try to lead the two congregations. But after doing it for several years, I burnt out and I just had to step away. And so I retired from Beth Sar Shalom a couple years ago, and Book of Life I stepped down from the lead position, but stayed in as a teaching pastor for a couple years and just retired from that about a month ago.
What an amazing perspective you must have brought to both congregations. That they were both very, very blessed to have you.
Thank you.
One of the things I discovered about you while I was preparing for this interview was a YouTube video of you giving the Birkat Kohanim, which is the priestly or Aaronic blessing at Sar Shalom. And this is where Noah's going to edit that video in so that everyone can see it.
I hope Noah, find a good version of it where I sound right.
No, the one I sent him is brilliant.
Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha, Yis Adonai panav elecha v'yosem lecho shalom. May the Lord bless you, and may the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his shalom. God bless your heart. Shabbat shalom.
And that video just about brought tears to my eyes, and I just want to say that it was very well done. This is one of the most profound prayers in all of Scripture because it came from the mouth of God himself. And I'm honored to say that it is also a blessing that we use in the Catholic Church, although not in Hebrew. Can you describe the sense of history and spirituality that you must feel in giving this blessing? Because after all, you're blessing the people exactly as Adonai himself instructed.
Yeah, there are certain things within tradition, for me personally, that after you do them, you're like, all right, this again, I've done this so many times, I don't want to do this anymore, or it loses its zing. But the Aaronic benediction, it stayed true, it stayed faithful, it was from the heart. In a sense, it's kind of like the Lord's blessing, which I do multiple times a day. I do it when I go to sleep, I do it when I wake up, I pray it over my family, my children. And it was the same with the Aaronic benediction. For those of you who don't know it, may the Lord bless you and may the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his peace. And so when we closed off our services, that was the way I dismissed the people, with God's blessing. And it felt good and it felt right.
Well, again, we frequently do that in the Catholic Church. When the priest gives the final blessing, he generally gives the Aaronic blessing. So it really it touches me in a very, very special way. You play a Pharisee in.
Hey, can I interrupt you? Something just came into my mind that I thought you'd like to hear.
Okay.
I was with a tour in Israel. We were in Jerusalem. We were in St. Anne's Church, one of the oldest churches in the world. It's like 1,000 years old. Beautiful, made out of concrete and stone or whatever the building material was. And tour groups often go in there and sing because the acoustics are just, they're historical, they're amazing. And so I spoke to my local tour guide and said, hey, what if I did the Aaronic blessing in here? And he looked around, he said, why not? And so sure enough, maybe for the first time in 1,000 years, the Aaronic benediction was ringing out through St. Anne's Cathedral into the courtyard. And it was a precious moment. I think somebody might have gotten it on tape. I'll have to try to dig that up someday.
Now you did it in Hebrew, correct?
I did it in Hebrew, yeah.
Okay, yes. So even though there might have been a priest that gave the blessing, it was certainly not in Hebrew. But
right, exactly, not in the Hebrew way.
Thank you for I know you have a lovely singing voice. So if only I had been there, that would have really been. If somebody did capture it, I'd love to see and hear it. So, well, thank you for sharing that. So you play a Pharisee in The Chosen, and in a dramatic series these days, playing a Pharisee is kind of like plowing through a minefield. We know that history has presented the Pharisees in a very harsh way, almost as villains. So, speaking from your perspective as a Jew and as a Christian, do you think the Pharisees were villains? And as an actor, do you think you're playing one?
Well, the Pharisees historically were the main religious group that ministered and led the people of Israel during the days of Yeshua, the days of Jesus. And so some people would have looked at them as oppressive. Other people would have looked at them as the people they look up to. Similar to today, some people really respect priests, rabbis, and pastors, and some people really look at them as all religions are horrible, they're man-made, and I don't want to have anything to do with them. Back then, though, I would say the majority of the people would have respected and revered the Pharisees for the most part. Sure, there would have been mean ones, and sure, there would have been nice ones, just like with all people, but Judaism and Jewish expression was big. And Galilee, where Jesus started his ministry and where it was centered and where the apostles came from was a Jewish hub of religiousness. So there was a lot of Jewish people who lived here and there who weren't very religious, but Galilee was known for being spiritual. So I think that the majority of people would have respected and honored the Pharisees. Do I find it difficult playing one? Not yet.
Well said.
My character is developing, and even I don't know where he's going. Dallas was great. We had some conversations about my character before I portrayed him on screen. And in episode 4, and I'm having a conversation with the other Pharisees, the other rabbis. We've just heard about John the Baptist. We're intrigued, we're interested, we're nervous.
He told tax collectors and soldiers not to extort money or collect more than they're authorized to.
They were present as he said this?
Yes. And he told the commoners to share food and clothing with those who have none.
He's preaching a populist message.
I play more of a kind of guy. I wonder what's going on here. I'm not sure if this is good or bad, but I'm intrigued. And I kind of get to express that in just a couple of lines I have there. And then when I come back in episode 8 at Matthew's dinner party, I get to play, I'm with Yussif, and we confront Jesus and Peter and all the disciples that are in the series at this point are there. Matthew's there. And I get to confront Jesus in such a way that I am offended that he's eating with sinners and tax collectors.
Would you like to come in?
We would never be caught dead in a...
In a what? In a tax collector's house?
Not only that, but with a... Do you know what she and he... They are...
You seem to be having troubles finding your words, man.
Why does your master eat with tax collectors and sinners?
It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick.
I must say, I am shocked. She is from the Red Quarter. Much of what is done there cannot even be spoken by my tongue or cross my lips. It is so unholy. The mere mention of it would defile me.
Sounds like a personal problem.
But him and the others he works with, they betray our people for money, and they're not even sorry.
If you're so offended, then leave. Let them speak, Andrew.
They've never offered guilt sacrifices in the temple.
What?
The priest keeps records. We check them.
Tax collectors are not welcome at the temple.
Would like them better if they made the proper sacrifices.
This is not about me. This is about what God wants.
You are forgetting the scroll of Hosea. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, more than sacrifice.
There are righteous men on the lookout for you, and they are weighing every word you say.
Is that the threat?
Please let them know this, Yussif. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners.
I'm kind of like, maybe ashamed isn't the right word, but I'm amazed that he would do such a thing. But then he starts talking and quoting scripture, and I listen to him. And so on the one hand, I'm upset just by the scandal. But on the other hand, the words of Jesus, I'm thinking on what he has to say. Yussif takes the lead. Yussif seems more confrontational. I'm a little more pensive. Now, you said, is it tough playing? And I said, not yet. I don't know where my character's going. You know, if my character ends up following Jesus, it'll be easy. If I end up hating Jesus, it'll be harder. But I'm an actor. And I'm doing this not only because I love acting, but because this is the most important acting project I'll probably ever have. I'm getting to share the gospel message with the world. And I would play Judas Iscariot or the high priest that betrays Jesus to help further the story of the gospel, knowing that I'm just playing. I'm a true believer in Jesus, and I think he appreciates that.
Well, you just led into my next question brilliantly here, because a lot of audiences mistakenly assume that because a particular actor appears in a Christian series or a movie, that the actor is in real life a devout, Bible-believing Christian. The irony here is that you play a Jewish Pharisee and you are Jewish, which brings an exquisite measure of realism to your performance. But of course, in real life, you are a Christian.
Yeah.
So what assumptions, if any, should an audience make when they see actors playing biblical characters or people of faith? And conversely, can or should a Christian actor play a bad guy or an unsavory character on screen? Is there appears to be some value in that?
Firstly, I would say a viewer of any TV or film should not assume that the actor is anything like the character he or she portrays. An atheist can play Jesus, and a believer can play. We just don't know. They're actors. That's what we do. So if somebody playing a certain role, we should never assume anything about that actor as a person. It's just so happens that Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus, loves the Lord, and several of the actors love the Lord, and several of them don't know the Lord and don't follow the Lord, and that's the way it is. And I'll follow Dallas's lead on this and let them speak for themselves. I wasn't hesitant to say Jonathan loves the Lord because he makes that very public. On his social media pages, he talks about God. He leads prayer groups and he quotes scripture and he's speaking of God all the time. So I'm not divulging anything that the world doesn't already know about him. Should a believer play a bad guy on film? Sure, why not? Each individual has to determine within their own comfort zone how far they'll go, in which film or TV series they want to play. And I can't speak for anybody else's. You know, I'm not a fan of rated R movies. I avoid them for the most part. But I in no way say, well, gee, if you liked them, there must be something evil about you and something more spiritual about me. I don't go there. It's just everybody, different strokes for different folks. I'm strong in some areas where you're weak in some areas where I'm strong, and that's just life. So each person has to decide where they'll want to go. I'm in discussions right now with an Oscar-winning filmmaker about a feature film he's making. He's offered me a role in his film as the main bad guy. And I told him, I auditioned, I got the role. And I said, well, now I need to read the script. And if the script is something that I can handle, then I'll do the role. And if it's not, then I won't. Or perhaps they'll change the role. People have done this for me and for others in the past. In fact, in the audition for this role, there was a lot of foul language, which I prefer not to use. And so I emailed to one of the producers who was holding the casting, and I said, you know, maybe this role isn't for me. I really don't prefer to use this kind of language, but thank you for the opportunity. Is it really necessary for this character? And she wrote back and she said, absolutely not at all for this character. In fact, we could play this character in such a way where he's offended by foul language. So please do submit your audition. So I took out all the foul language, submitted my audition, and I got the role.
Well, good on you, because
Yeah.
there aren't a lot of people who would have the integrity, number one. I think there are some actors in your position who would have read the role and said, this is not for me, and then dismissed it. But you were willing to get it to fit your values and your worldviews, and that's pretty awesome.
I'm just very thankful that these things have happened. And, you know, I'm not always going to pick the right roles, and sometimes you don't even know what your character is going to do. If you're in a TV series or a film and they write something unsavory for your character, it could be problematic. And sometimes, you know, we might cross the line that we don't really want to cross just for expediency of the moment. It's difficult, but I suppose we all have these trials in all of our careers. You're working at a business and somebody calls in and the boss says, shh, tell them I'm not here. Well, am I going to lie at that very moment, or am I going to lose my job? What do I do? We all have these types of things we wrestle with.
You know, getting back to the original question about people making assumptions, you may have heard this story. The great actor Max von Sydow recently passed away. And of course, he was an iconic figure in the movie business. But a lot of people forget that early in his career, he played Jesus. And so as a result of that, a lot of people assumed he was a believer. But it turns out that, like his Swedish compatriot, the film director.
Sorry, can't help. I don't know.
Ingmar Bergman. There it is. Bergman said, "Oh, you must be religious because you played Jesus," and he was surprised to find out that Max von Sydow was an atheist. And he said, "But you played Jesus." And Max von Sydow came back and said, "Yes, but I played him as a man." And I thought, well, okay, if that got you through the performance, that, good on you. People drew whatever conclusions they were going to draw. So switching gears for a moment, I want to get a little theological, if I can. You've written extensively about Messianic Judaism. In fact, again, you are the founding president of the Association of Messianic Congregations. Simply put, a Messianic Jew is one who believes that Jesus, or Yeshua, was indeed the Messiah who was promised in the Tanakh, the Hebrew, the Jewish Bible. In your opinion, does a Jew who believes in Yeshua reach a point of no return? And by that I mean, does the belief in Yeshua necessarily stop Jews from being Jewish? And what about the biblical and the traditional practices of Judaism, such as the kosher dietary laws? Is a Messianic Jew necessarily relieved of those obligations?
It's funny. There's a saying about Jewish people, and you can only use it if you're Jewish, by the way.
Yes.
You got 2 Jews, you have 3 opinions. And it's there's some truth to that stereotype.
Yes, there is.
And it's presented really well in Fiddler on the Roof when Tevye is going back and forth in his own mind about right versus wrong and what to do and what not to do. So obviously there's going to be a big spread of understanding and belief on that question. My perspective is this: being Jewish is ethnic/racial, it's covenant, it's history, and it's religious. It's a sense of identity. It's who your parents are. So if I, as a Jewish person, chose to give up everything that tasted or smelled of Jewishness, would I stop being Jewish? Well, if Italian persons gave up pizza and spaghetti and wine and ate only Mexican food, would they still be Italian? Of course. Now, a lot of people differ. They say, oh, being Jewish is not ethnic, but it is. Even ancestry, you run your ancestry, your DNA, they will put on there if you're Jewish or not. And it's got nothing to do with whether or not you're religious. It's got to do with your DNA. The descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and those who have joined them, are part of the Jewish people. Now, there, of course, is the theological or the religious side. There's the Judaism, which I guess I'll call normative Judaism, that the world has identified as Jewishness for the last couple thousand years. And then there's the Messianic Jews, those who believe in Jesus. The normative Judaism has generally said, hey, you believe in Jesus, you're not Jewish anymore. But by this, they mean we don't follow their Jewish beliefs and practices. Not that my blood has somehow transitioned and become Gentile. So that upsets a lot of people because on the one hand, they're being discounted as part of the people. And on the other hand, they want to discount them. And yet we are what we are. But over the last several years, there's been more of an acceptance of Jewish people who believe in Jesus as part of the Jewish milieu, I guess I could say. Here in Tucson, for example, our congregation was very active and led the March of Remembrance. It's a community event where people come together to remember those who died in the Holocaust and to support the state of modern Israel. And we had all sorts of people coming to this. Up on the stage, Holocaust survivors, rabbis, Reform, Orthodox, pastors, senators. And it was just a matter of, hey, we all agree on this. We come together on this. Now, you specifically asked about Jewish practice. For example, if a Jew who believes in Jesus, do they need to keep kosher? Some will say yes, some will say no. I say, hey, if you want to keep kosher, keep kosher. If you don't want to keep kosher, don't keep kosher. It's my belief that we're saved by grace and that we can live the life that God has called us to, and we're not bound to any external regulations under the new covenant. A lot of Messianic Jews would disagree with that. God bless them. They're okay. They can disagree with it.
Well, you're making me feel a lot better about keeping both sets of holidays now, however conflicting and inconvenient that frequently ends up being. But it's fun. And hey, listen, around December, you get more gifts. What could be better than that? So,
well, like I live in Arizona, and we have a very large Hispanic population here. So 5th of May, Cinco de Mayo, big celebration for Hispanics. They don't think, oh, I live in America now, so I don't do that. They'll have Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving and Cinco de Mayo on Cinco de Mayo. Just like you and I, we'll have Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving and we'll have Passover on Passover. I don't see any kind of conflict or confusion at all. It works perfectly from my frame of reference.
I'm glad you answered the question that way. I was kind of hoping that was what you would say. I'm going to get really esoteric here for maybe you, but especially for the audience. I think you're familiar with the very famous Rabbi Yitzhak Kadori of righteous memory, who passed away in 2006. He was a very holy and respected teacher for many years in Israel. And throughout his life, and just by the way, some people think he was 116 years old when he passed. So good on him. He believed that the Messiah would arrive soon. And according to a fascinating book called The Rabbi Who Found Messiah by the author Carl Gallups, this book is still in print, so you could probably get it in the library or on Amazon. He says in the book that the rabbi had actually seen the Messiah in a vision, and in a note that was written by the rabbi in Hebrew that was opened 1 year after his death by one of his students, the Messiah's name was revealed, albeit in an acronym, to be Yehoshua, which is, of course, another name for Jesus. And this revelation caused, to say the least, a controversy that continues to this day. Some suggest that the note was a forgery. Some say it was misunderstood. But my point is, in Matthew's gospel, Jesus says, "Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword." And then he goes on to say that a man's enemies will be the members of his own household. And sadly, 2,000 years later, this is still true of the household of Israel. So as a Jew and as a Christian, what are your thoughts on this? And were there enemies in your household, or were you the enemy?
Well, I did have and do have a lot of friends whose parents disowned them, actually had a funeral for them when they came to faith in Yeshua. As we say, they sat Shiva for them, which means they went through the mourning cycle. And all sorts of years passed, decades have passed, and their family wouldn't speak to them. Thank God for many of them, the grandchildren turned that all around, and some of them got back together with their parents. And times have changed, you know. From the days that I believed in the, early 80s to now, our society has changed tremendously. And so it was unspeakable back then and a shame. Now everything's open and open-mindedness prevails. More specifically, did I have any enemies in my household? I had people that gave me grief and had a hard time with my faith, and would, after the initial conversation, maybe some yelling, "Don't speak to me about this again." And that was that. And then our relationships continued. There was some discomfort every once in a while, maybe a little poke or a barb. But over time, it went from disgust to a grudging acceptance to an acceptance to a respect. Most of my relatives, they saw about how my synagogue was doing. And, I got to write for the paper and I got to get on TV. And, I was more observant than most of them were. So they had, what can you say when things like that happen? And they start asking me questions. I'm the one who lives it. I'm the one with the degree.
Isn't that ironic?
No.
It's usually the Messianic Jew that ends up getting asked all the Jewish questions, but that's because you have a better understanding of it. I'm happy to hear that there wasn't as much grief in your family. I only know so many of my friends who had to, their families sat shiva for them, and it was a horrible experience, but they never wavered in their faith. So, God bless them for that.
Amen.
You, of course, as a teacher, would be familiar with Maimonides, who was perhaps the wisest and most influential Torah scholar of the Middle Ages. And a very significant part of the philosophy of Maimonides was his effort to reconcile a God who is all good with the fact that evil exists in the world. And Maimonides believed that God created good and not evil, and so therefore evil is merely the absence of anything good. Now that seems to some people to be letting God off the hook rather easily, yet the problem of evil remains. And in these days of things like the coronavirus, people are asking, why is God allowing this to happen? Was Maimonides right? Do you think people bring calamity on themselves?
It's a big question, but it has, I think, a very simple answer, at least most of it. We were born in paradise. Adam and Eve were placed in the garden. Said, this is yours. I freely give it to you. Enjoy paradise. One simple rule. There's a tree in the midst of the garden. That'll kill you. Don't touch. So Adam and Eve took a look at the tree. They were tempted and decided to touch. That fractured their relationship with God. That introduced sin into the universe. And that which was good, made by God, became bad because of the touch of human beings. Our relationship with God was ruined. Our relationship with the planet and the universe was ruined. It brought in the potential for sickness and death. Everything bad that happens is a consequence of us bringing bad into the universe back in the Garden of Eden. So if something bad happens now, it may be of consequence because of your behavior or my behavior personally, or it may just be a ripple effect from somebody else's bad behavior. When we talk about something like the coronavirus, as far as we know, it's got nothing to do with anybody's behavior. It's just like a hurricane or a tornado. It's a horror of nature that ravishes people. We broke nature. God gave it to us whole. And so, yeah, it's humans' faults. It may not directly be Timothy's fault or Stephen's fault, but it's humanity's fault. Most of the sorrows we experience in life are man-made. The wars that we have, the problems with hunger and abuses, all man-made. We're broken, and that's why God sent us a Savior. His plan was to fix it all. His plan is to fix it all. He promises to fix it all. But there's an important piece that has to be understood: freedom of choice. God can't force us to love him. He can only offer his love. And he can't force us to obey him through love. So he's given us a time period for humanity to grow and to develop so that we can make choices. And we can determine whose kingdom we want to be part of. Ours, look at it, or the one he's going to give us with no sorrow, no pain, no crying. And so now we wait and we share the love of God, and we hope and pray that people will become believers as we anticipate a new heaven and a new earth. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, it does, actually. Maimonides, in fact, said that the whole freedom of choice thing was an important element in his philosophy. And even though, as far as we know, he wasn't a believer, he certainly never indicated, and he was expecting the Messiah just like every other Jew of his time. But yes, the whole freedom of choice, he did believe that mankind brought calamity upon itself. So I think you've got some good scholarship backing up your answer there. During the time that Jesus walked on the earth, there were two sects of Judaism, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And the simple explanation is that the Pharisees believed in the resurrection of the dead and the Sadducees did not. Now, the reality was a bit more complex. However, they did agree that Jesus was not the expected Messiah. Now, with respect to the chosen, can you give us an idea of what a character such as yours, a Pharisee, might have to discuss with a Sadducee? What exactly would you guys have in common? And more importantly, what else would you disagree on?
Pharisees and Sadducees, simply put, the Pharisees were religious and the Sadducees were political.
Mm-hmm.
They ran the temple. So they were also spiritual, at least on paper. They looked spiritual. They did spiritual things. But for the most part, it seems like their faith was more practical, more cultural, and they were more interacting with Rome and trying to make sure that the temple stayed functional and that the people stayed safe. The Pharisees were the rabbis of the people. They worked with the people. I don't know much about the Catholic Church, but my perspective is you've got the cardinals who reign on high, and then the priests that work with the people every day in their various churches.
That's
so in a sense, it would be like that. The Pharisees worked with the people, and the Sadducees reigned on high.
Yeah, the cardinals are the princes of the church, but the priests are actually the guys in the trenches. So that's a very good comparison.
It would have been very similar then, with the only exception that the Sanhedrin, which was the ultimate religious and political body, the high court of the land, it was the Congress, the high court, the president, the judiciary, all wrapped into one, had Pharisees and Sadducees in it. It was led by the chief priest. He was a Sadducee. So Pharisees and Sadducees would have bickered a lot. They had religious arguments, at least on paper. You know, we believe this, you believe that. The Sadducees, as I said, were political more than spiritual, so they didn't believe in angels, they didn't believe in the resurrection, whereas the Pharisees believed in all that stuff. They were the faithful ones. But they both had something common in the need to deal with John the Baptist and in the need to deal with Jesus. These guys were not like the other guys. There's something more powerful, more universal about them, and they needed to make a decision on how to deal with them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas and those writing The Chosen might bring that to the light, but that's entirely up to them, you know.
Well, you make a good point, because it was interesting. If they could not agree on much else, they certainly agreed that Jesus was a threat to their way of life. What has always struck me as ironic about the Sadducees is that they firmly believed in the Torah, and the first 5 books of the Bible, which clearly talk about angels and the supernatural, and yet they rejected it. And for whatever reason, I've never been able to come to grips with that. It was a very bizarre philosophy, to say the least.
It always seems to me that people from any religious group, but I can speak particularly of Judaism and Christianity, we like the smorgasbord approach to our religion. The parts that we like, we magnify, and the parts that we don't like, we reinterpret or ignore. It's human nature.
Well, they call those cafeteria Catholics in my world. Yes, I'll have this. Yes, I'll have that. No, I don't want any of that. And
yeah,
that's how it works out. You mentioned Dallas Jenkins, who is, of course, the creator of The Chosen. And he's been nothing if not fanatical about getting things right in the show in terms of scripture, but also Jewish history, customs, rituals, etc. I'm just curious, did Dallas ever draw upon your experience as a Messianic Jew during the production of the show? And forgive my temerity, if you had seen something in the script or on the set that didn't ring true, would you have brought it to his attention?
I have spoken with Dallas offset on some issues. He has consulted with me a little bit here and there. I mean, he has a Messianic rabbi, he has a priest, he has an evangelical leader, so he's got a good team. But every once in a while, if there was a disagreement or he wanted another Jewish believer's perspective, knowing that, you know, I have the history and the experience. Yeah, we have talked. Would I have told him if there was something wrong on set? Only if it was something significant, and I have not seen that. There are a couple things I might have disagreed with or approached differently, but based on the beginning of our conversations in the essentials unity and the non-essentials liberty and in all things charity, this is his project. He's doing a phenomenal job, and I don't want to mess with it. God bless him. May he keep on doing it.
You know, he's kind of like the conductor of a very large orchestra. And even though he doesn't play an instrument himself, he's the guy that starts and stops everybody. And
I mean, you can't imagine just how thrilled I am that he's not using Caucasians to play Jews to the best of his ability. He's getting people from Jewish backgrounds or the Middle East, or at least people with some skin tone, doing the best he can to be as authentic as he can. He has mentioned publicly more than once his desire for historical and cultural accuracy, and he's doing a great job, and I'm really appreciative of him for that. He has great respect for Jewish people, Jewish customs, Jewish history, and the nation of Israel, and it's awesome.
It is, and quite honestly, when I was watching it myself, it had a feeling of authenticity that was really kind of amazing. One of the fans emailed a question asking about the costumes that the people in the show, in The Chosen, wear, and I guess because you play a Pharisee, there was, well, for lack of a better word, maybe a uniform that the Pharisees wore, and I guess what this fan was wondering is, did the costume come with instructions as to exactly how to wear it and what to do while you're wearing it?
What a great question. So I get to talk to you what it's like to be an actor and what things happen behind the scenes.
Yes.
Yes, it's fun. So when I got the role for the Pharisee, I was sent the scripts for the first 4 episodes. Actually, I got all of those. And of course I got my lines, and got my day. I flew off to Texas. When my plane landed, I got several phone calls and texts. I got a phone call from the person who was coordinating my ride from the airport. I got a phone call from the person who was working with the actors with their dialects. And I got a phone call from wardrobe, the costuming.
Yes.
So I could go on set the day before I had to go on film. They could make sure all my measurements were as they expected. They could do some last minute fitting and try things on, get me my sandals, get me my robe, make sure my head covering works, pin it, adjust it. So when all of that is said and done, I stand there, they tell me what to put on, they address it, they lay it, and then they send you off to set. Then there are people on their team who are right there, right behind the camera. And if there's a break, and there's lots of breaks, okay, cut. When we hear that, there's a flurry of activity. Makeup comes out, wardrobe comes out, they address your headset, your headpiece, they move it. My hem was unraveling at the bottom, they sewed it up. Makeup would come and make sure you look right. And then the director would say, okay, we're ready. And everybody'd scatter, and we do it again. And every time, that was either what did happen or what could happen. Sometimes we would call for them because we would feel things going off, and then sometimes everything was fine and they'd leave us be.
It occurs to me that the actor Morgan Freeman was once asked about how he approached different roles, and he said that he never really made up his mind how he wanted to play a character until he saw the costumes. And I wonder, maybe it didn't play a part in your acting experience, but is that a valid observation?
Well, for him it was. For me, I knew exactly how I wanted to play this Pharisee. And like I said, I had conversations with Dallas about his intent, his direction. And then I had another conversation with Dallas for episode 8. So to find out where my character was going. And so I knew right away, the costume definitely helps me get into character. And I've got another feature film coming out called The Righteous 12. And I'm a bad to the bone cowboy, man, let me tell you. And putting on that costume with the hat and the duster and the bandolero, carrying the gun, putting on the dirt, it really helped me get into character. So even though I went into that knowing what I wanted to do, that costume helped a lot.
You segued perfectly into the next question here, because I was going to shift gears here and mention that you're working on a film called The Righteous 12, which, heaven help me, sounds like the new Quentin Tarantino movie. Okay, but you're not only an actor, you're also a producer, and the title sounds biblical, but when you go to the IMDb and look at the poster, it looks like a Western. So you're going to have to enlighten us here, certainly about the film, and of course where and when we'll be able to see it.
Right now it's called The Righteous 12, but I don't know if that's going to be its name when it hits theaters next fall. Actually, it's supposed to come out this fall.
Okay.
So I'll be posting it all over Facebook and Instagram when it comes out. So these 12 guys, they're bad guys. Their leader ends up dying, and now they're down to 11. And then my character comes in with some news that this next guy who's leading the Righteous 11, his brother just got killed in Tombstone. His brother was a preacher. And so now he takes him and his 10 other friends, his bad guys, and they're going to go get revenge on those that killed his brother. So we got some criminals who are going for a vengeance mission in Tombstone, Arizona. My character is talking to them throughout this trip to Tombstone, trying to get them to become righteous. And by the time they get to Tombstone, these guys end up becoming selfless men who would deliver a town because it's a good and right thing to do. And they all become the Righteous 12 at that point.
I hate to say it, but that almost does sound like a Quentin Tarantino plot line. But obviously, because there were 11 and 12 originally, and then 11 and then 12 again, I guess that must be the biblical reference. Would you describe The Righteous 12 as a faith-based movie? Well, let me rephrase the question. Let me ask, if a person of faith wants to see the movie, will they enjoy it? And if a person who likes Quentin Tarantino movies and Westerns, will they still possibly enjoy it?
Yes, this movie is going to be appropriate for everybody. There might be a director's cut that we have that's a little rougher, but the first release will be a faith, family-friendly version. And it's based kind of like a spaghetti Western more than a Quentin Tarantino film. It's more like the old Westerns you used to watch back in the day. There's a little teaser trailer out on YouTube and Facebook right now. So if y'all want to see it, just look up The Righteous 12, Steve Shermett, to make sure you get to the right place. And you can watch the teaser trailer. There's an older couple from like 2 years ago that are not done well. So you'll know you got the right one if it's produced properly. And like I said, it should be in theaters, limited theatrical release this fall, and then it'll probably hit streaming platforms everywhere.
Well, I know you've whetted my appetite, so I know I'm going to be looking forward to seeing it. It would only be a miracle and a blessing if we could get it on the PureFlix streaming platform, but let's not get
Well, hey, it could happen. My last film's on there, and it's doing quite well. It's called Amazed by You, and it's on PureFlix.
Okay. All right. Well, never tell God what he can and can't do.
Right.
That's the important thing. Only because you're the actor, and the actors never know where the shows are going to go. You've mentioned that your character is going to come back. Is there anything that you want to tell the Chosen fans in the meanwhile, while they're patiently waiting for the next season, now that you've got their full attention?
I do not know if my character is going to come back. I have no idea.
Well,
I hope he comes back. It makes sense that he would come back, but who could say? But yeah, is there anything I want to tell the Chosen fans? You've probably heard this a million times over, but you never know who's watching this, and it might be the first time for somebody. This was a crowd-funded project. Dallas and his team raised like $11 million outside of the system from investors to make season 1 happen. and it's taking the world by storm. It's over 12 million views already just from the app. I don't know how many millions saw it prior to the app coming out. And it's in every country of the world. It's exploding. Season 1 is done. If we want to make season 2, we need another $10, $11 million. This is being done by people buying season 1, by doing something called paying it forward. They download the app and then they make a donation so that people in other parts of the world can watch it for free. And then the money that they're using, part of that goes for the streaming and part of it goes to making season 2. So money for paying it forward, and then the money to buying the shirts and the hats and those type of things off of the Chosen merch website also go towards season 2. And hey, if you've got a couple $1 million sitting around and you'd like to invest in one of the best gospel presentations the world has ever seen that's hitting the entire world, people in Iraq are watching this. People in Iran are watching this. Feel free to get in touch with Dallas and the team. And the money comes in, season 2 will be made. If the money doesn't come in, season 2 won't be made.
I was just going to say I left my $1 million in my other pants, but
we'll wait for you.
No, that's a very good point. And at the risk of shamelessly plugging my own show, The Encounter on PureFlix, we feel the same way, that somewhat we don't know who's watching, and you only get maybe one opportunity in your life to witness to another person. And isn't it wonderful that God has given us this technology that we can reach out and witness to other people about our faith? And we don't actually have to be there. We can do it in an artistic way and still touch lives. And
yeah.
You've done that from the pulpit. You've done it from the Bema. You've done it on YouTube. Now you're doing it as an actor. So.
And I get to spend time, and now I've got a new friend who actually writes for PureFlix and the Encounter series. How cool is that?
So, any idea who that is?
I do.
If you do, give him my telephone number.
Right.
If I don't answer, it's because, never mind. Steve, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. You are only one of the busiest people I've come across. And I want to thank you for your great work, not only in front of the camera, but behind the camera. This was an absolute thrill for me. So thank you so much for being so accommodating.
And I want to thank Noah for introducing us to one another and for giving me the opportunity to be interviewed, and for meeting my new lifelong friend, Tim. This is awesome. And I'll see the rest of you on Facebook or on Instagram. Please reach out to me. I love talking to my friends online. God bless you. Till next time.
Thank you guys for watching and supporting The Chosen, and we're out.
Hey, it's Dallas. I'm the creator of The Chosen, and yes, season 1 of The Chosen is complete. All 8 episodes. They're available right now. You can look up The Chosen in the App Store or Google Play, and we're easy to find. You can download it and be watching within minutes. And in fact, it's unprecedented technology. You can connect to almost any device you have directly, and you don't even need a subscription. So I hope you'll check out season 1 of The Chosen right now.
Okay, and we are recording. I usually count myself in like a musician, so no one knows when to pick this up. So there were 2 prominent sects of Judaism, the Pharisees and...
Sorry about that.
We should have worn masks, because otherwise we could be affecting each other, not to mention the audience.
It's about a gang. I don't know, what do they call them back in the day during the cattle rustlers?
Maybe a posse.
No, posses were the good guys. These were bad guys.
Ooh, yeah, good question. Okay, well, banditos, who knows?
Well, we'll just we'll call them a gang for now because they confront some banditos, and I don't want to confuse anybody.
Okay, yeah, no confusing. Steve, you did far better than I could ever have imagined. And
awesome.
In my world, I don't get the opportunity to have these conversations with people. And so it was such a blessing to be able to pick your brain because not just Catholics, but Christians in general don't have any connection with the whole Jewish thing. And I know I could talk to you for hours because there would only be a million things. The good thing is that the questions that I asked you, the answers that you gave me were pretty much in line with everything I already believed. And
that's cool.
I came to those conclusions the long way around. There was no Steve Shermett who was able to give me any spiritual advice. I kind of had to wing it. So it's nice to see that the Holy Spirit was at work and that I wasn't misled.
No, it's fabulous. It's a beautiful thing.
But
and I take it for granted because I've been doing it so long. But for me too, I had to navigate this territory and find out where I wanted to land as well. You know what I mean?
Yes. And doubly difficult for you because, you're also an actor, and then people, again, make assumptions about actors, both good and bad. And it hurts my heart to see that the Jews are still portrayed as the bad guys. And that the story of Jesus and the Gospels is so much more complex than that. The Jews could not possibly have all been the bad guys, because how otherwise would the religion have propagated?
Let me tell it to you in a humorous Jewish way. We are the bad guys, but we're also the good guys.
Well, I'm gonna one up you on that, and I'm gonna say that there's none of us that are any good. If it was based on worthiness, none of us would be here. And that,
I think it was it Golda Meir who said, Jews are just like everybody else, only more so.
More so, yes, yeah. Exactly. Yep. And that is the truth. Regrettably, I have Italian friends who feel the same way, but it's valid. Frankly, I don't know how I've lived to be as old as I have and not known you. I just don't know why you weren't on my radar screen, but everything in God's time, it was there you are. And what a blessing to have you. You've written some fascinating articles, and I know I'm gonna go back. And I'm sure there's a bunch of YouTube videos out there.
There is something we didn't talk about called God's Learning Channel.
Okay.
And I did, I'll say 6 seasons maybe of a program called The Shepherd's Heart.
Yes, I saw that on the IMDb.
Okay, a lot of that is topics like we were discussing.
Okay.
And it's me and 2 or 3 other ministers talking about the religious views of various topics and how to integrate them into our lives today. And some of that you might appreciate. And then I also have a series called Rock, Shovels, and Manuscripts, and that's all biblical archaeology. But I think the Shepherd's Heart one would appeal to you.
I will definitely check it out. So again, thank you. This was such a blessing.
Oh, Timothy, it's my pleasure, man. I am so glad we met. Please, let's stay in touch, okay?
Yes, we are now officially on each other's radar screens.
Yes.
So we will only harass each other to no end, but it'll all be in a good way.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate it. Thank
you.
All
right, my friend. God bless. Shalom.
Shalom.